So for SI, I tend to pay selective sensory attention to what is personally interesting for me or gives me a strong personal impression. So sometimes I can seem like an intuitive because I can ignore lots of things in my environment that don't have an impact on me, or for whatever reason, I don't think that I need to take in that information. So sometimes it makes me appear as an intuitive in a way, but it's really just a more selective attention that I have, regarding the sensory information. I have a strong need for physical and emotional homeostasis. Like, when there's sudden changes, like in the physical environment or my emotional state, I get really sensitive to that. And I kind of want things to be kind of stable, on an even keel, not a lot of new chaos thrown in. As an SI lead, I tend to rely a lot on my past experience to guide my future. So when I make changes in my life, I don't make a whole lot of super drastic changes, but I think the changes that I make are more incremental. They're more smaller steps, more gradual, and they're based on what worked or did not work in the past, and I use that as a guide. I think the SI and FI combined together gives me a strong sense of nostalgia, kind of just imagining events that happened to me in the past. I can have vivid emotional memories associated with those events. Sometimes there's a desire for things to go back to what they were before, like if something was really pleasant in the past, I want to be able to re-experience that. I think with my FI, there's a strong sense of what's moral, what's right or wrong, and then just having a strong sense, I think, of personal dignity and not wanting that to be violated. And I think the FI with the SI kind of combined together, I think it gives me strong emotional sensory impressions, like just being moved by beauty, whether it's beautiful scenery in nature or music, to just kind of being moved by that. So for SI, it's when everything is in harmony and order. And like I said before, it's the sense of homeostasis and, and kind of like everything is perfect as it is. It doesn't need changing. With the FI, I think it's just being able to live life according to my values and doing what makes me happy and makes me happy personally, and not having to worry about others. For SI, I think it's feeling like I have to have all the details right. And sometimes I'll over-focus on details, and that can be exhausting. It can be exhausting having to pay attention to all that and focus on it and feeling responsible for it. And then also when things aren't the way I remembered them to be or the way I think they should be, when there's just sudden changes that I don't know how to handle, when my homeostasis is disruptive, I think that can intervene with my contentment. On the FI side, I think if I'm going by my feelings too much, it hinders getting the task done. And if I'm not getting the tasks done that are important to get done, then it's going to cause me problems later. So sometimes acting too much on FI in the moment causes problems later, which hinders contentment. And I think if I'm focused too much on FI at the expense of the FE counterpart, I think that hinders my relationships because I'm not focusing enough on the feelings or values of others. I'm I'm too self-absorbed. So then that's going to hinder contentment later on if my relationships aren't going the way I want them to. So SI, there's a strong desire for personal security. So for example, I work hard so that I can keep my job so that I have financial security, because I don't want to get fired and then I don't have a source of income. So just that strong sense of personal security in itself can make me disciplined. I think also having previous knowledge and experience that I can fall back on gives me the confidence that I can do the task successfully. For FI, I find that it's always easier to be motivated for things that I personally enjoy or find meaningful. If I don't enjoy a task, I can still push through it using SI and TE, but I'm doing this in order to be free to enjoy myself later with my FI. So for SI, I find that it's hard to motivate myself when I'm unsure of the outcome and I don't have a past precedent or knowledge base to fall back on. Then it's hard to get motivated for a task, if you don't know if it's going to be likely to succeed or what's going to happen. For FI, I find that it's harder to motivate myself if I don't personally enjoy what I'm doing or if doing it makes me feel bad in some way. TE, for me, is about meeting goals, seeing the logical consequences, the cause and effect of actions, solving problems, making things efficient, enforcing policies, making things fair for everybody, and make sure that solutions are workable for everybody. For NE, seeing new possibilities, exploring new concepts, seeing the larger patterns, and also it brings me a quirky sense of humor that's based on associations between rather dissimilar things, and coming up with silly puns. So for TE, it's about getting tasks done, utilizing my skills and knowledge to help others make a positive impact, and solving problems. For NE, it's being able to see new possibilities and insights that maybe I wasn't able to see before. And also NE just brings me a goofy silliness to it. And, when I make funny puns, for example. For TE, I have to realize that the logical thing is not always the thing that's going to personally make me happy. Sometimes being TE second, I focus more on, doing what's the logically correct thing to do, what's objective, and I'm disregarding my feelings in the process. Also, having to make things work for other people can be emotionally exhausting as well. Having to follow rules and procedures to make things fair for everyone. Again, it's good to do that. I think it's the right thing to do, but sometimes emotionally, it's exhausting if I'm doing that too much for too long. And again, because when I'm doing that, it's not always about what I'm valuing the most. For NE, it's when there's too much unpredictability, too many unknowns, or having to do something that's a bit too far out of my comfort zone. For TE, I think it's about seeing the logical consequences of my actions and how they affect others. For NE, it's about knowing that I can deal with whatever comes my way and not being afraid of the unknown. For TE, I think it's not being focused enough on my own enjoyment. So therefore, it's harder to motivate myself if I'm not enjoying what I'm doing. And with TE, I'm focused more on the task on the task at hand, but it also helps if I can bring FI in and do something that I personally enjoy. NE, I think it's when I don't have a clear enough path or direction to go in. Like when there's all these different possibilities and I'm not sure how to prioritize them, or which one should I pursue first or in which order, when there's not enough structure to that, then it's harder to be disciplined. So starting with SE. So SE for me is being able to notice what's right in front of me, what's happening right now, without having any preconceptions or judgments about it, or just noticing what's novel in the sensory world that I find personally interesting, and then going ahead and pursuing that. Or just being able to experience the now without any past precedent, kind of like you're experiencing something as if each time it's a new experience. For TI, I'm looking at how does this make sense to me personally? Having my own personal ideas about things, regardless of what other people might be thinking about it. It's developing my own logical frameworks for things and kind of digging deeper into the logic behind something, really going deep and understanding why on a fundamental level something works, rather than, well, this just works and this is going to give me results. With TI, it's a little slower to get results than TE is because it's digging deeper. But I think TI is important because I think in the long run, it's going to give me higher quality results if I know how something works on a fundamental level. For FE, for me, it's about being attentive to other people's emotions and values, and having a desire to please other people and to get positive validation from them, and being attuned to the surrounding emotional vibe. Contrary to myth that ISTJs aren't sensitive, I'm very sensitive, and I am quite sensitive to the surrounding emotional vibes, and like being around negative people for a while, then I can start to feel kind of negative being around them. And I think also I experience FI when I'm mindful and considerate of other people's feelings and wanting to be tactful and not say things that I know are going to offend others, and try to say things in a more polite way. Okay, and then finally, NI. For me, I experience NI when I'm looking at deeper meanings and significance on a global scale. Occasionally, I might have hunches about things, like how I think things are going to work out, but I find that I tend to disrespect the hunches for the most part because I'm about getting the evidence for things. And it's being able to see some of the larger scale patterns. But then, once again, I kind of feel like I kind of disrespect my NI in a way, because it's always like, well, yeah, you see a pattern here, but you shouldn't overgeneralize. You got to gather more evidence for that. So it's kind of like my other functions, especially my SI and my TE, are kind of talking me out of doing the NI. So for SE, it's about discovering new sensations that I like. For example, trying new foods or traveling to new places. It's taking an exploratory approach and just taking things as they are, and accepting the chaos, and just feeling confident that you can quickly improvise in the moment to solve problems. For TI, I feel contentment when something makes logical sense to me, when all the parts fit together, when I've been able to build like a logical structure or framework that I can then use to apply to a multitude of situations to be able to solve problems. For FE, it's just being in a positive emotional atmosphere and having harmonious relationships with people and getting positive validation from others, and kind of when we have a shared emotional unity, kind of meaning that we get each other emotionally, I think. Or maybe we're doing like a shared activity and we all enjoy it and we all deeply value it and we're on the same page that way. For NI, it's about seeing the underlying patterns and meanings and getting that deeper significance and feeling a strong sense of oneness with the universe. And I gotta say, with that last part, I don't think I really experience it that much. But when I do, it's kind of like, wow, you know, maybe I should pay more attention to this or look at it more from that angle. So for SE, I think it's when I have to pay attention to too many things at once, because then I just kind of get overwhelmed and I lose focus. Or when I realized that I overlooked something important in the sensory world, that doesn't make me happy. Kind of like somebody moved my cheese, literally, and I'm like, I can't find it now. I also find that I'm highly sensitive to physical sensations and discomfort. So like if I'm in physical pain, or if I'm too hot or too cold or too hungry or thirsty, that can make me kind of grouchy. For TI, it hinders my contentment because TI, although very useful, I find kind of slows down my problem-solving process, because rather than just doing something because I know it works, with TI, it's kind of taking that step back, being willing to slow it down a bit, and looking at the underlying principle behind it. And yeah, I think it kind of slows things down to do that, although I think sometimes it saves you time in the long run, because if you know the underlying principle, then you can apply that principle to solve, you know, many different problems and prevent it from happening again. And I think TI, you know, hinders my contentment because for me, it's not enough to just know that I am right. I think sometimes TE, like people that have TI high in their stack, like I know I'm right. I don't care what other people think, but for me, I do care what other people think. And so even though I think I might be right, I still feel like I need to get that external validation from other people. And I think that's where that TE comes in. I think TI also hinders my contentment when things just aren't making logical sense. So when there's a lot of inconsistencies that aren't being resolved. For FE, it hinders my contentment when I have to spend too much time trying to please other people or soothe other people's negative emotions. Kind of like in the workplace, sometimes I have to deal with like rude or unpleasant people, or sometimes I just always have to put a smile on my face because what I'm doing is very customer service oriented. And sometimes if I have to do that for too long, it gets kind of exhausting. So yeah, like sometimes when I have to be all polite and pleasant to people and I don't feel that way on the inside and I gotta put on a facade, that hinders my contentment. And then, you know, if other people are just kind of very, very negative and or rude, that can bring me down as well. And then finally for NI, I think it's when people overgeneralize things that really bothers me. It's kind of like they see one instance or two, they make a pattern out of it, and I'm like, no, you need to gather more evidence. I find that kind of irritating. And then personally, sometimes I feel like I lack a strong sense of greater purpose in my life. Kind of like, why am I really here? And what is my true calling in life? And does life even have a true meaning? So sometimes some of that existential anxiety can really get me down. And, and I being in my shadow, I think maybe it's harder for me to access that. And I think also when I have trouble narrowing down possibilities, because because I'm more NE than NI, I tend to be more divergent in seeing possibilities, but sometimes it's useful to be able to narrow them down. And then when I have trouble doing that, then I can get overwhelmed. For SE, it's about focusing closely on my environment and tracking important changes in my surroundings. Because a change in my surroundings that I see may be important to the task at hand. It helps me to do my task more effectively or efficiently. And I gotta be honest that this is something I need to do more, because I have a habit of relying too much on my memory of how things were and assuming that they're always going to be that way. So like when I'm at work, I work in a library, and then like somebody rearranges where certain books are. I may not notice that immediately, and I start walking somebody to the shelf thinking that they're in this location, and it turns out that they got relocated somewhere else, and then that's kind of embarrassing. And I think if I had better access to my SE, I'd maybe notice those kinds of things more, rather than just over assuming that things are always the same. So for TI, it's about being consistent with my logical reasoning and how I do things. And just having a good reason why the things I do, what I do, makes sense to me. I think that helps me stay disciplined. For FE, I think there's a sense of accountability there, because I don't want to let other people down and have them mad at me. And again, I think this is kind of a bit of a shadow side, because then if they're mad at me, then I got to deal with their negative emotions. And sometimes I don't always feel very well equipped to deal with other people's negative emotions. I find it really draining. And then also, if people are mad at you, it threatens the relationships that I have with the people that are important to me, which I don't want. And then finally for NI, I think it's about having an awareness of the overall objective. Like, why on a deeper, more profound level am I doing this? What is the key objective here? Kind of the big picture, and not getting hung up on some of the more trivial details. So for SE, I think it's just having a lack of focus and just kind of taking a shotgun approach. Just kind of, well, do this, and then I go here, and then I go there, and then I'm just not disciplined. For TI, I think it's because I'm overthinking things, and therefore I'm not getting enough things done in the outside world. For FE, it's when I'm focusing more on other people's needs and feelings, and then that's distracting me from my own tasks. And then for NI, I think it's when I'm too single-minded about something, and I'm not doing what should be done right now in the moment. I'm not being adaptable enough. Okay, so because NE is my fourth function, sometimes I'm hesitant to just make guesses about things, because I want to make sure I have enough facts. I want to feel sure. And so I've learned to not be so afraid to make guesses. And I think for feeling, I've come to realize that not everything in life has to be rational. And there's always going to be things that just don't make logical sense. And I think to just be more accepting of that, and to be more accepting of my own irrationality, and to allow myself to be emotionally vulnerable and not feel so ashamed about that. And I think also because I'm T above F, I want things in life to be fair. And sometimes not everything in life is fair, okay? And sometimes people are biased, okay? And they make biased decisions. They hire somebody who isn't as qualified just because they personally like them better. I mean, just things like that. I think I mentioned before about SC, one of my shadow functions, is that sometimes I don't see things I'm supposed to be seeing in the physical environment. Even though I lead with sensing, sometimes I'm rather unobservant because, again, my SI kind of has a filter to it, and it's selectively taking in things. So I need to be more open to SE and just kind of take in the environment as a whole more, and not just rely so much on my SI. Sometimes my FI function will take things overly personal, and sometimes it's not personal. So that's another thing. And then my TE function will tend to measure my self-worth based on what I do and what I accomplish. And that's where FI would help. It's because it's not about what I do, it's about who I am as a person. It's about my character. And I think because I'm more T than F, sometimes I'm kind of uneasy about my F, and sometimes I'm uneasy about feelings, and sometimes I just want to get rid of the bad feelings. But sometimes to really grow, I have to be able to just sit with my bad feelings and really allow myself to accept them and process them. And then finally, I think just doing what I really want to do, even though it may not be the most logical thing to do, even though it may not be the most stable or secure option. So kind of letting myself, get in more touch with my FI and NE, rather than just going to my top two functions, SI and TE. So there you have it. That's how I, as an ISTJ, experience my cognitive functions. I hope you found that helpful.